Again, I've already covered this. We just make sure that we keep the testimony of the Messiah. We're keeping the holy days of the Messiah as well, of the Father, all 7 holy convocations, utilizing his true clock, his true scriptural calendar, learning about his 12-month years, his sabbatical years, and his true fixed seasons. So always looking at this 7,000-year cycle as we cover this topic, it has 7 different types of cycles that are grouped into years: the 1-year cycle, the 7-year cycle, the 28-year cycle, the 70-year cycle, the 100-year cycle, the 700-year cycle, and the 1,000-year cycle. And as you can see in the red, they're all multiples of the 7,000-year cycle. This is something that is covered a lot in various lessons throughout our channel. Always remembering that there's 2,556,750 days in the 7,000-year cycle. Again, as we look at the 7,000-year week for this era, we are over in day 7 area, 6222. We're in this final time. We are in the last days. Last week, we were able to look at Jah's 28-year cycle and cover it fully. And hopefully that if you didn't get a chance, please, check it out. I'll probably put a link to this video, to that video in the description below. But it's something that's important to know, and we're not going to cover it today at all. We're just going to go right through. And what I want to show everyone today is just how to use the study calendar for the coming year, and go over a few things, and then hopefully by maybe tomorrow or this early week, I'll just release the calendar for people to download in a PDF format. You can print it out and use it for yourself that way, or you can just view it online same way. We cover a lot of this before the 28-year cycles, right? As you read, if you get now the Revelation of Jah's Almanac, we should understand how these 28-year cycles operate. They go right from year 1 to the end, to the year 7,000, which of course is equivalent to 2800 AD, as we show a lot. So we're going to look at the common year from the year 6,222 from the foundation of Jah. It's the 6th year of the 28-year cycle, and it's the Gregorian common year 2022 AD. So I'm going to really go through these through various understandings. Most of this lesson here is about charts and references, and there's going to be some scriptures to show a few understandings, but I'm leaving the bulk of proving that February is equivalent to, or Abib is equivalent to February for next week. It'll be something that you'll be able to utilize. But even today, as we go through today's, little study lesson here, you'll also get a good understanding that February is the beginning of the year. And when we talk about the beginning of the year, we're going to be focusing on the land of Israel. So this is the year, as you can see in the pointing at the top there, the year 6077 from Christian, or it's 1877 AD. So this is for our era going right through. And I want to break this down because this is a lot of part. People want to, get an understanding of where we are in time and how time is utilized with the 28-year cycle, as we're going to use these calendars for this year. So again, I just want to say that from up here where the red is, the red arrow, that's going to be 1877 AD. And this chart shows the years 6077 to 6300, or the years 1877 to 2100 AD, which is basically 78 years into the future. So you'll see where the arrow is pointing for the 20th century, or the year 6101 or 1901 AD. This is the beginning of the 20th century, and you can see its calendar, 21, 22, 23, 24. Yep. So calendar 24 for that era, and of course in the midst of the week. Shalom, shout shalom to all. Come in the room. So we got the next 28-year cycle, another 28-year cycle as we're going through. We're coming close to our era now. And this will be where a lot of us were probably born. If you're, I guess you'd be over 40. If you're over 40, for sure. If you're over 50, or yeah, over 40 for sure. I was born in the year 1971, and you can see where I'm showing there. That's 71 right there, 61, 71. And then at the bottom, we have that year 200 is the year 6200 or 2000 AD, right? The beginning of the 21st century. And as we go to the top, this is our era where we are now. So this is where we are now for the next, for the 28-year cycle. It started in the year 2017 or 6217 for those who know jazz chronology. And again, you can see it's 28 numbers. And right now we're in the year going into the year 6222. And so right here you can see it's calendar 22, which is also calendar 6 when we count within our 28-year cycle. So we're at calendar 22 for this era. I'm just highlighting this so that you can get a good understanding, so that when you do get the calendar and you study it yourself, that you have a better understanding. Now, this is the second year I've released the calendar like this as a study almanac, and I'm not really sure how much people really utilized it and studied it. Sometimes I kind of just sit back and, I won't lie, I just watch to see if people are following the calendar, and I won't mention the special dates coming up or not, because I'm always, it's encouraging to see that when you're doing a work, right? And I mean, all of us, we want to get recognized for our work, but it's good when you see people, you're doing a work, you're putting out a study or something like that, you make a video, and then people, are utilizing it. They're studying from it, they're learning from it, they give you some feedback, they ask questions. But I do know for the most part, in these times, a lot of these things aren't happening, even though, I mean, a lot of people have a lot of questions, and many people want the calendar and say, hey, I'll just send it, because they want to put it on the wall. And I know it looks pretty and everything, but the thing is, I'm trying to get these things to stick in our minds so that we can get other teachers and, to help other people learn about these things as well. And I know, I mean, there's a time for everything, and people have different, I guess, offices and ministries where they teach various different understandings. But think about this too. When before Israel came out of Egypt, first what the father did is he spoke to Moses, right? He revealed himself to Moses. He even gave Moses his name. And then after that, he gives the calendar in Exodus chapter 12. And this is before they even kind of like go into Egypt to do anything. Then you see that he releases he not releases, but he shows his festival of Passover. And then he puts them through the test of the 7-day Sabbath. And all of these things happen before the Most High officially speaks the 10 commandments in Exodus chapter 20. So again, I just want people to focus on this order. We could be in this time frame. People are learning about the name greatly. Even though there's controversies, people recognize that the Holy One of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is recognized by a name. That's good. And then we have the calendar, and there's a lot of more people coming in with the calendar talk and understanding, even though most people come in with the lunisolar calendar, but that knowledge is growing. I've seen it grow over the last 20 years greatly. And then, an understanding of the festivals have grown with Passover and everything. More people are learning about the 7-day Sabbath. And then, of course, the laws, commandments, and statutes that guide our morality, show our faith and the testimony of the Messiah that way. These things are increasing greatly during these times, as well as falsehood is greatly increasing. And you're going to find that when you deal with these topics of scripture, just be careful when you're dealing with individuals out there, because a lot of people, they might not accept it. And it might be because maybe they don't like how you present it. They don't like you or something. But always be sure, if somebody wants to question anything, to prove something or not prove it, let's, have the verses brought forth and talk those things and bring out the scriptures, personal studies, especially when I'm dealing with people one-on-one personally. Because what I find mostly is that I know I do videos, but people usually just, if they disagree with me, they say, watch this guy's video or watch that guy's video. And sometimes I want to know, like, hey, well, what did you get out of the video? Did you write down the verses? Do you understand what's going on? But people want to point me in different directions. And I mean, that's okay. And that's why I put out videos myself so I can say, hey, watch my video because I've spoken about that, or this is how I handle it. Because usually these topics, you can't cover them very quickly. And I know at times past, when we try to reason with brethren and sisters, and even me, sometimes it can get kind of heated. And I've been through that, and sometimes I admit, man, I've kind of got frustrated in my feelings because I'm wondering why people are disagreeing with something, but then they're not giving me the verse. And I know I'm supposed to be like the Messiah, meek and humble, but I just find that, to be honest, personally annoying because it's like, how come, somebody could say they disagree with something, but they have no verses about it, or they want to proclaim it? I mean, it's just fair if somebody brings up the verse, and that so be it. If I'm proven wrong, I'm proven wrong. If people disagree, they can disagree. But I always like a disagreement from the scripture. And I don't know about you, but that's important to me. And like I said, man, anybody wants to do with my videos, comment, disagreement, and point it out. Say, hey, man, brother Sean, you quoted that verse and it was wrong, or whatever it is. That understanding doesn't make sense because A, B, C, X, Y, Z, and then show me something. But for just to sit back and say, well, it's wrong, well, why is it wrong? Well, I don't agree with it. Why? Well, and it's like kind of like that. And I won't lie, I think I've rubbed people the wrong way back in the past with my zealous aggression at times, and so people might not like my style, and I don't want to turn them away from true doctrine, but I know how that can work sometimes. So that's why I always kind of get back into working on myself, being prepared for disagreements and being prepared to kind of, let's say, go through agitations of debates in a certain sense, and where I got to be more concerned about controlling my demeanor, because even if I'm speaking truth, people are going to be, oh, he was yelling, and I get that. So I'm on a new tip that way. And that's why, as the year comes up, this is an important year, the sixth year coming up, 6222. And this is an important time to get yourself together. So sorry for that, that little, what people say, soliloquy, or a little bit of a mini quiet rant. But I believe these things are true, and you should make people, disagree with you too over scriptures. Otherwise, it's like, why even bother reason with anybody? Let's move on with this chart here. So there's the year 6222 or 2022 AD. You can see again it's calendar 6. And after this year 300, right? You can see the ninth 700-year cycle ends year 6300 or 21 AD. So this is the end of the ninth 700-year cycle, and then 301, if it was right down here underneath, it is there, but I just don't want to show it now to confuse, is the beginning of the 10th 700-year cycle. And the Messiah is coming within this 10th 700-year cycle. The Messiah was born at the beginning of the seventh 700-year cycle. And Jah has his numbers. So we're into the 10th 700-year cycle as it finishes off going, at that time, going through the year 7,000. Shabbat shalom to all who've come in the room. Don't forget to give a thumbs up as we get the algorithms. So let's look at this 20-year cycle of our era, because I'm just focusing again. I want to let you know, for the most part, most of these charts are going to be in the PDF booklet, so to speak, for this year's calendar. But a lot of what you're going to see today might not be there, because I'm just focusing on the things that are important. And because next year is a sabbatical year, and then the following year is a year of Jubilee, I have plans and other charts to just make those two calendars wonderful. Hopefully you can print them up, you can hang them on their walls, and they'll be ready that way. So again, we're just preparing for these times if Jah spares our life. So this is Jah's 20-year cycle from the creation year 6217 to 6244, or 2017 to 2044 AD. And remember, the 20-year cycle can't fail. Nobody can gainsay it. They can only say they don't like it, but they can't prove it wrong because the numbers add up. So this is where we're going to be getting into calendar. As you can see, calendar 6. In 2 weeks, this is going to be the beginning of calendar 6. So I'm preparing you just before the year comes. And then after that, like I said, is a sabbatical year, 2023. And after that is probably the one Jubilee year that most of us will kind of like see in our adulthood. I think the last one was when I was like 1 years old or something like that. So again, you can see that it starts at the year calendar 16217. Going through, we have our 3 minor sabbatical years, and then we have our major sabbatical year, and that's the year 2044. So I want to let you know that most calendars that are in operation are resetting themselves for 2044. Chinese calendar, Gregorian calendar, Julian calendar. I'm not sure about the Metonic Luni solar calendar with their 19-year cycle, but I wouldn't be surprised because that's an important time frame of the calendars resetting for the future. And when you get to see the banner of Jazz 28-year cycle for this era, understanding how to utilize it. This is calendar 1, and of course 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we're going to be here where we are, calendar 6. Remember that we're in calendar 6. And as we're in calendar 6 this year, you're going to see like the year's going to be starting with the number 6. And don't get all bent out of shape because there's so much sixes. It's just because that the 20-year cycle of the Gregorian calendar moves through. So 1 year, like last year or this year, all the calendar every month started on like February 7th, March 7th, April 7th. And then the coming year is going to be February 6th, March 6th. And then the following year be like, it might be March 5th, June 5th, all the fives that way. So we have our sabbatical years, which again, remember, they work perfectly, cannot be gainsaid. And this is why, this is one thing I'm glad it's true. This is all the first day of the year, which is the first day of the week. Remember, Jazz Almanac the year always begins on a Sunday or first day of the week. Again, if you want to be technical, it's Saturday night, 6 p.m., right? And so it's always the first day of the week. And when we look at, the Gregorian calendar, because remember, it moves, it wanders, where most high things are fixed. So if you look at calendar 1 of the 28-year cycle, which is equivalent to 2017, like I said, this is this era, and it goes right down to 14. And when we go to the other side, it goes to 28, but we're going to focus on 14 for 1 second. And just give me 1 second here. Let me just take a look at this. Let me just go deal with my cat as always. Sorry, I'm back here again. So as we look at this chart again, you see 2017, and then it goes through. We're in going to be going in calendar 6, remember? So it says February 6th, 6222, 2022. We're coming out of 6221, and that's why I was saying that all the months that calendar last year began on the 7th. So this one's the 6th. You can see next year's the 5th and 11th and 9th. It's moving around because the Gregorian calendar moves around with leap years. So like I said, if you're seeing, like, let's use calendar 10 for example, a bib one is equivalent to February 8th, then that year Jazz, every month of Jazz calendar, his fixed months will be, like I said, March 8th, March, April 8th, May 8th, June 8th, going all the way through the year. It'll begin on the 8th that year. And so we here have, again, the rest of the 28-year cycle. So on the right, from calendar 15 through to 28. So you can know all of the, this is a great revelation. This is open now for people to see it. They can rewind the video, take a screenshot of it. And of course, like I said, I'll be bringing forth these things and putting in a PDF format for you. But nothing here can slip. Everything moves in perfection. I'm just going to take a look in the chat. Okay, yep. Hold on 1 second again. All right. So hopefully you see that. If there's any questions about it, you can put it in the commentary. comment section because I have no problem dealing with any questions. But again, focusing on these charts, this is good for you to know, and you will get a copy in the copy of the study calendar. I will put this in there again just to help people go along. So this is again the common year for the next year that's showing up. Abib begins on the first day of the week, the top left. It's the latter rain season or the spring season, equivalent to February. In that month, you have the Passover, the crucifixion, the resurrection, and the waving of the sheaf, all within just first 28-day month. Remember, the rest of the months are 31 and 30 respectively. And on this chart, you can see the beginning of the months are highlighted. The Sabbaths are in red. The count to Pentecost is in italics here, red with the 7 Sabbaths with the orange highlights. We got when we get to the third month, we got the Feast of First Fruits on the 12th of Sivan. So when you utilizing this chart here, you're going to see like there's commentaries for everyone to get through. Summer begins in May. Autumn begins in Ethanim, and that's also Ethan was August, sorry, and that's for another holy month where we got trumpets, atonement, tabernacles on the 8th day, and they're all highlighted. Now, again, this is Jah's almanac without the Gregorian dates on it, and this is what something is good for us to do. And like I said, program these things in your mind, knowing how many days are in the month, what day of the week they start on. Once you get good at these things, you'll understand it, and it'll fall into play. But again, just so not to get anybody confused, there's no, only the month equivalents, but I have no Gregorian dates that are set on this chart. And as we go to winter, which is the early rains, as you can see, and I just want to let you know again, if you go up top to the spring, we have the latter rains. So this is the early rains after the 6-month summer season, which is also equivalent to winter, and it's November, December, and January. And again, this is the month of Purim. So this is a good chart for you to know of a common year of 364 days, not a sabbatical year. Remember, sabbatical years are a bit different. And always remember that the equinoxes and solstices are always going to be in the middle of Jah season, just like how you see on your screen. That's how it works. That's the shift that Satan has put on the calendar to try to make it look plausible. And everybody in the world has been deceived by the equinoxes and solstices. Trust me, everyone. I'm not trying to say I was at one time, but you come out of the deception. These are not, like March 21st is not the beginning of true spring. That's astronomical. It's satanic. And if you just look at North America, you will never, ever see, how the seasons operate unless you go to a subtropical country like Israel. Always have this Russian person coming spying on things. So let's look at some time cycles of Jah's 364-day calendar year. The 24-hour day or date cycle, the 7-day weekly cycle, the 12-month yearly cycle, the 4 3-month seasonal divisions, the winter rain and summer dry seasons. And you can see the numerical values right there. I'll tell you something. I don't know who this individual is, but I just noticed from last week, and if they can hear me or whatever, you could either comment, but it seems like some type of, when I checked it out, whoever this person is in the chat room, it's like, believe it or not, it's at least some Russian kind of business. So I don't know what's going on. They're out there just trying to figure out what's happening, or they're interested. I'm always paying attention to these things. Hagzum Mefsiuf. So let's look at this chart here. Days, months, and seasons of Jah's common year of 364 days. Remember that we have the 6-month summer and winter seasons, and I will elaborate on these things. So that you have in the beginning of the year, you have the second rains, then you have the 6-month hot, dry summer season, then you have the beginning of the winter rains or the first rains. It's just basically it's just two groups of 6, right? 6 months summer, 6 months of rain. And just know that the beginning of the rainy season comes after the summer season. So the last 3 months of the year are actually the first rains, and then the first 3 months of the scriptural year are actually the second rains. We have the 4 seasons if you want to divide them up. And please pay attention to the color codes. The color codes will help bring a great understanding. Blue and the warm colors. We have 12 months of the year, 364 days, so on and so forth. We have the amount of days in each month. 28, 31, 30, 31, 30, 31, 30, 31, 31, 30, 31, 30, and so on. And remember, all these charts you'll get to study for yourself. As we focus on the common year of 6222 or 2022, we have Jazz months on the far left, the Gregorian equivalent in the middle, and the number of days in Jazz months and the seasons. Again, with our color code, we have the latter rains beginning in Abib, February, rainy season up until the end of April. We have summer beginning in May, and again, it's May 6th. All the numbers are 6 this year. We have autumn. We have our winter, of course, totaling 364 days. So again, as you look at this, your mind is focusing on this coming year. So, even if, let's say, you don't have your almanac, handy, you could always remember, man, hey, you know what? February 6th, the 6th of every month is going to be the beginning of Jazz New Month. And that's just something, again, should be very helpful to navigate your way through time. Now, here's a chart. I find, this chart's been going around for a long time, and this is because there's a deception, obviously. And so it reads here, these months still have Latin numbers in their names. And you see me speak about this a lot: September, October, November, December. So they say, so if December is the 10th month, then let's continue. January is 11th, 12th is February is the 12th, and March would be the new year. But the thing about this is, and yeah, this is how it looks on the Gregorian calendar, but it's a double whammy deception, right? Because when you're looking at September, October, November, which is supposed to be 7, 8, 9, and 10, it's talking about the Roman lunar months. It ain't talking about Jazz calendar or some, anything that's dealing with the scriptures. It's just that, before the Julian calendar came on the scene, it was just a Roman calendar that was all messed up and mixed around, and they used these numbers in their time frames. They always wanted to begin in March because they're dealing with the equinox. They're dealing with the planets, Mars. They're dealing with the Ishtar or Aprilis for April. There's a reason why people think that April Fools is some kind of reverse thing, but it's a trick. April is not the beginning of the year. It's something that people have put out there. So you'll notice that, the Most High's calendar that begins in February, it's sandwiched in between the solar Gregorian calendar, which is January, the beginning, and then you have March, which is March or April, and then you have February right in the middle there, right? And you're sandwiched in, again, hiding things. And just think about it. Why would the second month of the year have 28 days? What's the reason behind that? Right? It's because it's a trick. It's dealing with a bib, and a bib is 28 days long, and that is how these guys cover things, right? Do your own research on February, what it's called. It's the month of purification and cleansing, and that's exactly what a bib is. It's a month of cleansing. So really, this year is still a part of Jeroboam's ancient evil calendar. These are Jeroboam's false month, and again, you can check out a lesson about Jeroboam and the false calendar on my channel. There's probably about 2 or 3 videos on it. So you'll see that September. So now this is again where the trick is. All right. So September now is known as in the world as the 9th month. But when they say Sept, they say it should be the 7th. But truly, in Jazz, the yellows are in Jazz Almanac. That's the yellow. It's truly the 8th month. So if you know anything about the calendar of Jeroboam, he made a false festival for Israel to follow that was in the 8th month. But the trick is not just to move the calendar to the 8th or keep a festival in the 8th month, but to move the whole calendar so that people would think that September is really the 7th month. And then they keep, as you know, people keep their Sukkot and the Gentiles' tabernacles and all of that is right there in September. Of course, it's attached to the September autumn equinox. What else is it going to be attached to? So this is the folly, and people follow this, and just go along with it. Don't question anything. Don't do any research. And then when you come and show them, they're ready to argue and fight with you, but they don't even know, the left from the right when it comes to calendars. That's why I have to sometimes take it easy. But at times, it just, you want to find willing ears that are just going to take their time, search it out, and then, of course, then kind of like formulate their questions or their contentions. But rather than, I'm telling you, when I get into calendar, I can't even get past a day with people sometimes. Like, all right, so you say it's February. Tell us about February. And I start talking about February. Do you worship on a 24-hour Sabbath or a 12-hour? And I'm like, 24. Oh man, that can't be right. And I have to go through the 12, all of that. Do you use the lunar months or solar months? Or, well, we don't use the lunar months. It's like, you'd be surprised. Don't go any further. And I have to say, Jah's Almanac that has been released in the year 2000 in book form, the year 2000, Jah's Almanac 2000. This was released as a book. Look how long. We're in 2021 right now, right? And so when I say that, it's been many years going through fights and this and that, and nobody, when I mean nobody, comes like with a scripture verse or a proper like why the almanac is wrong. And I do know that because nobody's heard of it. It's not been out there for people to fight and shoot down, but now it is. They can shoot it down all they want. And like I said, just do so with the scripture, because I'm going to shoot down every other calendar, and that's what it's about. It's not about shooting down brothers. It's about shooting down false doctrine or sisters. It's false doctrine. It has to be, that's what scripture says. It's for correction, for rebuke, for exhortation. But, when it comes to rebuking and correcting things, people want to hold on to what they want to hold on to. So then animosity is created and all kind of things. But let's get back to the topic. You can see here, in the yellow is the true understanding of these months, and you can see the great deceptions. Abib, February is the first month, and March is the second month. It's mid-spring, as we've been showing. This is something that is true, but like I said, I'm telling you, when I talk about February, everybody sends me the same chart here. And I guess I can't help it. That's what the deception's about. But man, it's like they don't even put that to the test. And so this laborious work and the offenses that may come with it is something that we're just going to have to deal with as we move through time. Again, March is the beginning of the false equinox year, the satanic year. So Josh's true seasons and the fall seasons are. And if you look at this, you see that true spring starts up here. And this is the scriptural seasons and mid seasons for the year 6222 or 2022 AD, where we are right now. As you can see in the far left, it's the 6th of every month. Spring begins on February 6th. Summer begins May 6th. Autumn begins August 6th. And winter begins November 6th. Again, can't be gainsaid. We have our mid-spring. These are the equinoxes and the solstices, which are the midpoints, as you can see. And then we start with Abib, February, being true spring. Then we have March coming along, where false spring begins, right? The March equinox, March 20 to 22, the mid-spring equinox. Then we have true summer. And we call the 4th month Judah because they call it Tammuz. And Judah is the 4th son, so we just put it that way. But it's the fourth month. And it's the beginning of summer. And this is so, people know all other nations. I'm telling you, the Chinese calendar, boy, the Chinese calendar is something else. I'm telling you, these guys know what's going on to the T. The Chinese calendar does use February as the beginning of the year. And sometimes I just look at, see what's going on, and how their rise is great and everything. And if you look at their calendar, they use the Gregorian calendar because of the money and economics and the world. They live in a Roman world. But them in particular, they know Jah's Almanac. They know it because they start their year in the beginning of February. And even though it's a lunar calendar, let me tell you something, that Chinese calendar, as much as people want to say, oh, they're Gentiles and heathen, this and that, it's more accurate than the so-called Hebrew lunisolar calendar. And that's a fact, because they begin in the right time. Yet they still use lunar months and all of that. And I know about these things. I just don't want to go on and on about it. I'm just trying to let you know that there's things out there. You'd be surprised what's going on. This is why these guys have some type of something behind them. But continuing, we got June for the false summer. We got Ethanim for true autumn, August 6th. Then we got the false autumn beginning in September. True autumn beginning in Tibet or November. And then we have December, again, where the false winter begins with the solstice. So, I mean, a beautiful chart again to try to let you see in your mind how it goes. And I know February is that when the barley's ready and all of this and that. Remember, the barley starts the third week into the first month. It doesn't start in the first of the month. If anybody knows about the waving of the sheaf, it's barley harvest. So it's the third week that barley begins. So near end of February and sometimes just as we get into March is when barley begins. But people are not thinking that. They think when I say the calendar starts in February or a bib is in February, they just look at the beginning of February. But everybody should know the barley season does not start officially by law, according to this holy scriptures, until the waving of the sheaf, which is the 22nd of Abib, not the first of Abib. That's the beginning of the year. It's not the beginning of the barley season or the count to the beginning of the wheat season. It's a great error, and hopefully next week we'll show that because that's going to be a part of this thing here. But just an understanding that I think that has to be put out there. I'm telling you, people's minds aren't even in this mind frame. That's how I know it's going to be challenging because they can't help but see, like, hey, February, it's snow. Looking at another chart, we have the season, the far left, the true month order of Jazz months. They're in the white here. The Gregorian is in the yellow, the Gregorian equivalent. Then we have the false month order or the lunisolar calendar order. And when I talk about the false lunisolar calendar, I'm talking about the calendar that professes to be the scriptural calendar, which is a lunisolar calendar. It's really the Babylonian calendar, but we've been tricked to call it a Hebrew calendar. So I tell people to be careful in their understanding of what a Hebrew really is. So we can see spring, which is the latter rains, because that's why, and it's also still cold. January and February are the coldest months of Jazz calendar, the last month of the year and the first month of the year. When we go across, we see Abib is equivalent to Gregorian February, but that's the false lunisolar calendar. That's the 12th month, so it's Adar for them. And then we got Zif, which is the second month, equivalent, as I'm showing you, to the March equinox. But for the lunar solar calendar people, that's the first month. And you see, when I talk about the first month of these calendars, you need to bear this in mind. It's important. They don't mean like if I put their March at the beginning of their Nisan or their Abib, it's not the beginning of March. When they do their changes, it's usually, like I said, that third week into a month. So just like when they have their pagan all that Capricorn stuff, the zodiac and everything, they always chop up the months by the 22nd or 21st. And you'll see that they change these things at that time. Because when you do it that way, people with their candid mind won't be able to find it. It's just like, hey. So when I'm saying Nisan is equivalent to March, it's the spring equinox we're talking about here. We're not talking about March 1st. And that's what you have to understand. The trick is just like that. And this name here, Nisan, is a pagan god of Babylon. So when the Israelites lost, the first 10 tribes followed Jeroboam, followed the false calendar, they went into captivity. Then they kept that false Jeroboam calendar. Babylon was keeping it, but then they put the pagan names on. So Nisan is a pagan god, but notice when this pagan god is honored during the March spring equinox. You're going to see a pattern here. And then April and so on and so forth. Now we got summer beginning in May. We got the third month being Sivan according to them, but this is just fourth month. But look at the June summer solstice. Look what it's equivalent to, the fourth month of their calendar, and Tammuz. That's right. Tammuz is a pagan god. Even in the Bible, it says, there's Israelites weeping for Tammuz. Just that you know that they ended up following a false calendar and a false god, right? Tammuz, Baal, Bel, the devil, all of those are just different names for the same adversary. But it's a pagan god. That's why we don't use it. We use Judah or Dan, sorry, and it's at the solstice because it's the solstices are the ways that the ancient heathens and pagans, right, even the disobedient Israelites would honor the sun, moon, and stars. That's what it's all about, worshiping sun, moon, and star days, and it's still here today. And that's why you have people who use lunar months always gonna, keep the week-long festivals on a full moon. That same type of werewolf, vampire, witch thing, Halloween thing, right? But I'm just saying, gotta put it out there because people got to take a look at it, and if it means joking them with some kind of sarcasm, maybe so. You can joke back. I can handle it. Again, though, but joke back with something concrete. Then we have the latter part of autumn, summer. Sorry. So remember, summer is 6 months long, from 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those are 6 months. Tishri, another name that's not in the scriptures, dealing with the 7th month. What's this here? Oh, sorry. Sorry here. What is this? Yeah, my bad. Tishri, something came up on my screen here. What's going on here? Oh, that's what it is. As you see, 7th, the equinox again, where they worship and they follow the false seasons, right? Tishri, false god, not in the scripture either. And then as we finish it off, we have winter beginning in November, Tibet. Again, the December solstice is another pagan god thing, but they didn't do anything here. They just kept it Tibet. Remember the whole aspect about deception. You got to use some truth and mix it in with falsehood. Otherwise, people will know, right? The poison that you put in somebody's drink, it's got to be tasteless or taste like the drink. Otherwise, they might taste the drink and they spit it out. So the devil giving us poison, it's the same way, mixing up things, the Gregorian calendar, the Babylonian calendar. And people are thinking, oh, the people who follow the lunisolar calendar, all they fight is the Gregorian calendar. And the Gregorian calendar people say, hey, we're not keeping that lunar calendar. Meanwhile, Jazz Almanac is right in the middle, moving along smoothly. Again, looking at the year, all of this thing I just showed you, I'm going to keep reiterating certain things as you see it. They are the midpoints of the seasons, the equinoxes and solstices. And we're talking about the Most High's calendar. When things begin, you got to deal with the summer and winter seasons. The cold, rainy season called winter, which is the early and latter rains of 6 months, and the hot, dry season also called summer, which also has 6 months in it as well. You can see the numerical values. There's 180 days in a common year, and 184 days in a common year for summer and winter. Add them together, they give you 364. In sabbatical years, winter gets more extended. So using our color code, again, we have our latter rain season. Sorry, not the early. I always make that mistake. We have the seasons, whatever's going on. This is when the spring harvest starts. It's still the latter part of winter. So when you understand that the two 6 month seasons, as you can see, like there's 3 months of blue at top, 3 months of blue at the bottom, 6 months in the middle. And when people say like, hey, February is like winter. Well, just remember, winter is dealing with rains. Snow deals with rain as well. The scriptures show you that Jah makes it snow to, take care of the herbs of the field, right? Those are verses. I'm not going to give you what it is exactly, but, you can search up snow and just look up all the words of snow. You'll find it. So it shouldn't be surprising that February, March, and April are water or cold months than normal because summer starts in May. And people hear this all the time. I say it all the time. April showers bring May flowers. That's something that people know about. So the rainy season ends in April, even though it's the beginning of the latter rains in February, but it's 3 months long. Then you got your summer season, 6 months dry. You can split them up to be late summer is autumn, and you just call it early summer, summer. And remember, when I showed you that dictionary definition of midsummer, it talks about June 21st as being midsummer. And then we have our latter rain season of 3 months as well. So again, I want you to focus. You can maybe do all the reading. I know some of my charts are busy, but I'm focusing on the color codes of 3 and 3. So all you need to deal with in scriptures is know your summer and your winter seasons, and then you can dictate of understanding when the beginning of the year is just from that aspect. I'm going to look in the room for a second here. No, if you're in April, well, yeah, if you're in April, yeah, you're born in you're born in the same month as the Messiah, I guess, right? Remember that winter season is warm in the other part of the world. Let's continue. So what I've done here again, I've just focused. So I've like looking back here, I've extracted those 6 months of the summer season. I've extracted the two rainy seasons just so that you can kind of see them, kind of how they work individually. So what I'm going to focus on is now the summer aspect, and you can see from looking up top, Judah's the 4th month, 5th, 6th, Ethanim's the 7th month. Then we go to 8th and the 9th. This is the 6-month summer season. The first 3 months you can call summer, and the last 3 months you can call autumn. And I know people put up down and say, hey, can you please show me where autumn is in the scriptures? Well, the word autumn you can't find in the scriptures, but an understanding of seed time and the summer harvest give you a good sense of what autumn is. So I use autumn at times to help people get to orient themselves that way. But if I didn't want to use autumn, we could still call it the latter summer. Just like how you have the early rains and the latter rains, you would have early summer for the 3 months, and then you have latter summer. It's just that it makes a lot of sense to use the term autumn because it refers to all of the seasonal characteristics of that season, and it fits perfectly with just things. But people want to get bent out of shape about autumn. Don't worry, we can call it the other term, summer harvest, end of summer, or even the seed time area. And then we're going to extract the one winter season of 6 months because they fall on top of each other. So you have, again, looking at this, you have the 10th month, Tebeth, beginning of winter right here. The first 3 months are called the early rains. There's 91 days. And then the last 3 months begin with the first month of Bib, February, and go through to the end of April. After April showers are done, and in Israel in particular, there is no rain for 6 months perfectly. And that's what you're going to probably see when you look at the climate of Israel and everything very clearly that I'm going to try to show today. You can't gainsay those things. It's impossible. You'd have to change up the climate of Israel, right? But you can't fit the climate of Israel onto a lunar calendar nor the Gregorian calendar to make it work in perfect harmony like it does on Jah's almanac. So again, remember, the beginning of winter is the 10th month. The beginning of spring or the latter rains is going to be the first month of Bib. So looking at it again, this is the spring, the latter rains, the first 3 months. After April is done or Savannah is done, right? Oh, sorry, winter latter rains, barley and wheat harvest all start during this time. We have our equinox, and then we have the summer fruits, vegetables, grain season starting from May. And this is when the wheat starts, all up in these areas. Color coded with red because it's the first 3 months of summer. We have our solstice in the middle. And then we have autumn again, still a part of the summer season, the last 3 months. This is where you have seed time, ingathering, plowing, threshing, the vintage comes in, and the sowing of seeds. All carry out through this 3-month season. Obviously, the sowing of seeds is going to come later here when you start to see the latter rains just begin at the end of the 9th month. Autumn equinox always in the middle. And then you have the early rain season. Winter, barley, wheat sowing all occurs during this time to be ready again in Abib. Let's take a little bit of a second to analyze that chart. And we got our winter solstice in the middle. So let's look at Jah's official scriptural agricultural seasons for the land of Israel. All these are official. I contacted Brother Jazra, and he verified that all of these are official statements from the scripture and from the climate or the meteorological seasons and the climate seasons of Israel. So this is official. People can gainsay it, whatever, and that's okay. That's what we're here for. Actually, I want to hear people talk against it, in a good way. Believe it or not, it's been a long time since I've kind of felt that, hey man, this is why you're wrong, kind of thing, and you know, would like it because then it's going to get people to think, right? So let's take a look here. Knowing that the seasons are the latter rain, spring grain harvest from February to April ends. Summer begins May and ends July. Seed time, autumn, August to October. Again, saying the same thing that you've seen on a different chart. The winter and early rains from November to January ends, or the end of January. A cycle that just repeats itself over and over again. So up top, we have the scriptural and Gregorian months together, you'll see. We have the Babylonian lunar solar months, the false calendar. We have the climate and the weather for that time of year in Israel, and we have the agricultural crops that you can harvest in Israel according to the Holy Bible, and everything that you need to do to know your true farming seasons, how they work year to year all the time. Now, bear this in mind. Sometimes Jah makes a famine, and sometimes Jah sends extra rains and washes out crops and all kind of things. Freaky weather can happen. So, don't look at those things and just let them dictate, how you see things. Think about how the average climate goes and what it would be like, right? So again, we have our first 3 months, Abib, Zif, Sivan, equivalent to February, March, and April. The Babylonian calendars, Adar, Nisan, and Zif. And remember, they try to call Nisan Abib too, but can't bother give that to just things, Latter rains begin. Then we have mid-spring during the March. Latter rains end. There's no more rain. You got your barley harvest starting at the end of February, continuing all the way through to April. Remember, these harvests come in kind of crops. So you have your first crop, your second crop. Some even have third crops. So barley doesn't stop like at summer. It's just that the first crops are coming in. Wheat begins in May, and then it has a couple of crops throughout the year. But we're talking about the beginning and the first harvesting of these crops. Then again, we're looking at the fourth, 4, 5, 6, Judah, Dan, Elul. Summer begins midsummer. This is where we get our summer fruits, your fruits and vegetables, and all of those things. The grain harvest, like I said, are still coming through. Ethanim, as you know, now is August, ingathering, an ingathering time of all the things. And by the time you get to October, this is when threshing and plowing begins, and also the end. See, pumpkins and certain things that grow on vines, they tend to come near the end of the 6 month summer season. It's like the vintage. And that's why you see in October, at the end of October, and all throughout the month of October, but let's just use the pagan Halloween thing. The reason why they use pumpkins is because that's the agricultural year when those come in. They're the last of the crops before the winter starts. So when they're keeping this thing like Halloween, and I'll tell you something, they know something, they're covering it up because Halloween really is honoring the ending of summer and the beginning of winter. And that's why they have the death and dead and everything, because it's like the crops and the trees dying out before winter, before Jah resurrects them again. So they cover these things with honoring pagan deities, the devil himself. But when you pull back the fossilized layers, you're like, yeah, these guys are hiding the seasons. And of course, when it comes to the winter seasons, you got your winter early rains for month 9, midwinter in December, early rains end. You have your seed time planting of the barley harvest, which will be ready for February. Sowing wheat in the middle, we'll have the wheat ready for May. All of these, why I say these are official is because speaking to, the calendar expert Jazra, he's like saying these are the times of the year when you look at how long barley takes to mature from seed plant and how long the wheat matures from the seed, going through all of its stages until it's ready to ripe. There's different understandings, 150-day count, a 90-day count. And it's good to know these things. And that's why I know that calendar expert Jazra, he searched these out and he's all put them all into a whole bunch of different charts. And, I have access to these things. And so hopefully as we go through, you get a lot more understanding. Now let's look at God's official seasonal climate averages for the land of Israel. And as I go back, you're going to want to say, well, show me the scriptures for this and that. Well, there are a whole bunch of scriptures for these things, especially when you talk about the festivals. But I'm not showing the scriptures now. I will add those things to it and, so on and so forth. You'll get to see the scriptures, but it's good to get the charts out there so there's an understanding, and then the scriptures will complement everything. The seasons of the land of Israel. Deuteronomy 11. But the land whither you go to possess it is a land of hills and valleys, and drinketh water of the rain of heaven. This is the Most High in Deuteronomy telling the people when they go into the promised land, the land of Canaan, commonly and normally known as the land of Israel today, that it's a special place, that His eyes upon it. And that's why when we use the scriptural calendar, we use Israel as the standard as well, because that's what Jah was talking about. If you use the Arctic, if you use Canada, if you use way south in Australia, the seasons aren't dictated like how they would be in Israel and all of those subtropical areas. Even if it comes down to even like the Caribbean, they tend to operate in that part of the world, the midpoint. I won't even call it the equator, but the midpoint of the subtropical areas. They all share basically the same climate in a certain sense. It's just that you're going to see some places snow is substituted for just rain. Right? In Canada, we get snow more or less in these times, whereas if you go to Israel, they get snow once in a while. You go to the Caribbean, most of the time you're only going to get rain, but in Canada, you'll have the snow, which is still rain. Continuing. A land which Jah thy Elohim careth for. The eyes of Jah thy Elohim are always upon it. Look at this, from the beginning of the year, that's Abib, even unto the end of the year, Adar. And it shall come to pass, if you shall hearken diligently unto my commandments, which I have commanded you this day, to love Jah your El, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. Hear this, that I will give you the rain of your land in his what? Due season, his appointed season, right? The proper season, the first rain or the early rain, and the latter rain, that thou mayest gather in thy corn and thine wine and thine oil. So when we're talking about this rain here, it's the same thing. The early and latter rains is the same thing as saying winter. Even according to your scriptures, it's called the winter rains. So you see Jah has a special eye on Israel. Again, when we look at these subtropical things, we know that Jerusalem is middle of the earth. I teach that greatly, right? And we're in this part of the earth. And the tropical and subtropical regions see little annual fluctuation of sunlight. However, the dry season, this is official stuff, from May to October is called summer, and the rainy season, November to April, is called winter, even though it's located in the northern hemisphere. See, the word winter actually is tied to the word water. It's tied to it very, it's dealing with wind, it's dealing with cold, and it's dealing with water when you look up these words and their etymology beginnings. So let's get the form and latter rains, get a couple of verses for these. Then shall we know, if we follow on to know Jah, his going forth is prepared as the morning, and he shall come unto us as the rain, the latter and the former rain. Former rain means first or early unto the earth. Let's look at the early and latter rain phrase. And we're just going to go right down to basically to the bottom. Long patience for it until he receive the early and latter rains. So we see, looking at these verses, we can compare the latter rains is dealing with the latter rains, and the early rain is dealing with the former rains. It's just another name for early rains. Some people try to take these and make like 3-4 rainy seasons because they don't understand how these rainy seasons actually work. So the winter rainy season officially starts at the end of the 9th month, according to scripture. Ezra 10. Then all the men of Judah and Benjamin gathered themselves together unto Jerusalem within 3 days. It was the 9th month. Notice it's near the end of the month, the 20th day of the month, 10 days before. And all the people sat in the street of the house of El, trembling of this matter, and for the what? The great rain. It's a rainy season time starting. And Ezra the priest stood up and said unto them, You have transgressed and have taken strange wives to increase the trespass of Israel. Now therefore make confession unto Jah, Elohim of your fathers, and do his pleasure, and separate yourselves from the people of the land and from the strange wives. Then all the congregation answered and said with a loud voice, As thou saidest, so we must do. But the people are many, and it is a time of much rain, and we are not able to stand outside without, neither is this work of one day or two, for we are many that have transgressed this thing. So again, you see, it's a time of much rain. It's not a rainy day. They're not talking about one or two. They know the rainy seasons. And this is what I always like to share. Like, ancient Israelites knew these things. Just like how I say, oh, I know the back of my hand. If I ask you January, February, March, April, you will know. Or when is, if I ask you when is June, you'll be like, oh, that's the summertime, according to what you've studied. So you've been learning all the wrong things all these years, and you're able to probably cut it off your head with such ease. But again, you have to reprogram. You have to deprogram the falsehood and reprogram the truth. And what's really hard most of the time when you're dealing with truth is taking out the falsehood, because you always go back to it because you're always doubting. But if you're strong enough, and if Jah is with us, and we pray to him and we humble ourselves, he will reprogram our minds or renew our spirit. Shabbat shalom to all who have come in the room. In verse Jeremiah chapter 6, it says, Now the king sat in the winter house in the 9th month, and there was fire on the hearth burning before him. So what I want to let you know is that even though it's talking about the 9th month in both of these verses, it's talking about the end of the 9th month. And when you check out the climate of Israel, that's exactly what they say. They say, just as it trickles, like at the end of October, the climaticians will say that, the early rains just start, and then they boost up and pick up by the beginning of November. But we have more verses. Let's get to a few other ones. Ezra 10. And this is dealing with the same situation. And the children of the captivity did so, and Ezra the priest with a certain chief of the fathers after the house of their fathers, and all of them by their names were separated, and sat down in the first day of the 10th month to examine the matter. So that's the month Tebeth, the beginning of winter, or the early rain season. And they made an end of all the men that had taken strange wives by the first day of the first month, which is the beginning of the latter rain season. Notice this first day of the first month. Remember the rainy seasons last 6 months. So we have the first 3 months of the early rains, and now the latter rains, which begin in the first month, Abib, start from that first day as well. So here we are looking at the same chart, Tebeth, the 10th month, and just like a week before that begins the latter rains in the end of the 9th month. It lasts for 3 months. This is how long it took them to deal with that strange wives matter. And then Abib, February, begins the latter rain months of 3 months and ends in April. April showers again bring May flowers. Shabbat shalom to all. Whoa. Again, knowing where the fake seasons begin, or midwinter. As you can see up here, Sabbat is the 11th month. That's December. That's when the winter solstice. And remember, that's midwinter. March is mid-spring, not the beginning of spring. This is from Echo Israel. You can type this up and look up the website yourself. But notice it's dealing with, it says the spring semester, spring 2018 starting mid-February. But look at what it says right here. It says February is the beginning of spring in Israel. I always like to just give that look. Now these are official things, and when you go to all the official sites of Israel, you're gonna see this. It's a marvel, eh? I'm telling you, it's something else. It just shows you that these things have been hidden by the Most High for us until a time period. The devil has, done his job, but the Most High has taken his time to reveal things, and that's what he does. He does it at his pace. He doesn't run out there first and try to be first. No, we'll trot along slowly. The race is not for the swift, but for those who endure. And here we are coming now with certain things. It says February is the beginning of spring in Israel, right? These are official Israelite things. So I don't want to hear nobody too much getting on me, like, hey, what's with this February thing? Especially after you start to hear about it. So it says February is the beginning of Israel. There is still rainfall, but the weather starts warming up. Everything is green. This is them talking, and blooming. This is a wonderful time on the farm. It says in March, we celebrate together the Feast of Purim. So look at this. You see how their own confusion, their mouth condemns them. February is the beginning of spring, but Purim occurs during the 12th month. We're in the 12th month of Adar. That's when Purim is. So look at that. Spring begins in February, but there's still going to be in the 12th month. See, they don't associate spring with February with Abib. They only associate spring with February, but it doesn't have anything to do with their months because they follow lunar months. So I hope you're seeing the confusion here. Look what they say. In April is Passover. During the Passover week, participants do wet, blah, blah. Guess what? In April is Pentecost, Feast of First Fruits. Again, a shifting of the seasons and of the festivals. And it goes on to say some other stuff. At the bottom, it says the weather is heating up in the beginning of May. That's right. May is the beginning of summer in Israel. Let's look at the latter rains. Remember the latter rains in the first month. Joel chapter 2, verse 23. Be glad then, ye children of Zion, and rejoice in Jael. Yes, rejoice. For he hath given you the former rain, that's the early rain, moderately, and he will cause to come down for you the rain, the former rain, and the latter rain in the first month. So the latter rain occurs and starts in the first month. According to your Bible, it says it right there, the former rain and the latter rain in the first month, which is Abib. It has to last for 3 months. Remember that. February, March, and April. If you have the ending of March being the beginning of your latter rain season, or even the beginning of April, you got end of March, April, May. May there's no rain. It's already done. If you have April as the beginning of your year, which sometimes the lunisolar calendar starts in April, then that's the first month of latter rain season. You're supposed to have 3 months. So you have April, May, and June, or June, right? May and June have no rain in Israel, like barely a drop. So it can't be a rainy season. See, this is the trick. And it's going to be exposed. Just like all other false doctrines are going to be exposed over time. People can cling to them all they want. But be honest, you better stop holding on to these falsehoods still and start seeking truth and reevaluate their whole faith system. Because we're here to turn the world upside down and shake it up with just truth. So again, you already saw this chart, but again, I just want to reiterate, the early rains begin in November, 3-month season. The latter rains begin in February for a 3-month season, according to the scripture, according to the climate of Israel, which means we're according to truth. Let's look at another website. You see it up here? You can check it out yourself. Vered Go, Spring in Israel. Let's take a look here. It says, I'm just going to point up to where the arrow is pointing in. Let's read it. Israel in the spring heralds the start of the most incredible display of wildflowers. In the Galilee and the Golan Heights, glorious flowers burst into bloom and cover the hills and the fields with color, beginning during what? January. So again, that would be even super winter, right? But look at them. And lasting until late spring. Bam, 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 bam. This is planning during the holy, in the Holy Land, Holy Tour. Look at where the arrow is. As February arrives and spring temperatures become apparent, all different kinds of flowers can be seen, many of them unique to certain areas, particularly the magnificent An's eye tulips, so on and so forth. The next paragraph. During the months of February and March, numerous people visit Mount Gilboa to view the dark purple iris that are found on these slopes. It's a sight not to be seen. And it even says here, Mount Hermon capped with snow and the beautiful valley to be seen below. So again, more understandings, just to set it in your mind. It's not absurd that February is the beginning of the true year. Chinese calendars, they seem to know it perfectly too, because it is something. We've been deceived. That's all you have to accept. It's not you're dumb. It's not you're stupid. You don't have faith or the Holy Spirit. The devils did a great job of tricking everybody to think that spring begins in March. Why does it look so? It's because by when March comes, spring has already been started for 45 days. So, it looks like it. But spring starts from waters, from the seed, underground first. Then things spring up as you go through the season. It's not one day you look outside and, the beginning of spring and there's everything bloomed. That's not how seasons move. They end from one season, then they go to the other, and then they end from that one, they go to it. They grow, they have a climax, and they come down. But Babylon hides it. And so by the time you're in mid-spring in March 21st, it already looks like, hey, look at everything around us. The bunnies are jumping and everything. It's April, and guys, it's a deception. Again, you're not dumb or stupid or evil. I'm just highlighting these things because it's the biggest hoax. The revelation of Jah's Almanac is probably the greatest revelation of our time. It's a revealing that has been hidden for the last, what, 2,000 years or more since the Messiah. Everything else has been coming out, the names and the understandings and so-called paleo proto Hebrew scripts and all these things. But the calendar has not been out. This is the greatest revelation of scriptural understanding of our time, and it's going to go to the future. And if Babylon wants to kill us off or whatever, they can't stop it anyways, because this is according to Jah's schedule. Hope you join. And I hope when you listen to these lessons for the next couple of weeks, you can see clearly that we got to keep the new year right. We got to keep the true Passover, because that's where the Father's going to give us his spirit and revive us. But, I'll tell you, let me say one other thing quickly. I know my time is getting short. But, people still can't help but to try to set new trends for January and want to have resolutions and January comes on, hey, I'm going to stop doing this dry January. I'm going to start working out more, and wonder why it can't work out, because you're not attuned to the seasons. You got to be in tune to the seasons of life. And February is the beginning of spring, the waters, the roots being put in the ground as try to fulfill your spiritual goals. And then by the time summer, these things will be bearing fruits. But you can't do it in January. And I know people still know January is fake and everything, but they still can't help it because they've been programmed up for so many years that, hey, let me start a new type of goal at January 1st. Boy, the deception goes far, my friends. Yeah. Give thanks to Jah for David Ray. Took him out of the way before all of this foolishness happened too. So let's look at summer and winter in the land of Israel very clearly. The hot, dry season called summer, the cold, rainy season. Looking at the Smith's Bible Dictionary, and again, use Bible dictionaries, they're not bad. On page 23, under the heading of agriculture, the period denoted by the common scriptural expressions of the early and latter rains, in all of those verses, generally reaches from November to April, constituted the rainy season, and the remainder of the year, the dry season. So true. You even see the meteorological, tropical, and subtropical seasons, the dry season or the wet season, or the dry season, however you want to see it, in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere. But we're in the north, so November 1st, end date April 30th. This is a more official documents from Brother Jazra, who has searched out things. In the tropics and subtropics, where seasonal dates also vary, it's more common to speak of the rainy or wet or monsoon season versus the dry season. For example, in Israel, the dry season is called summer, and the rainy season, November to April, May to October, is called winter. Even though it is located in the northern hemisphere, there is no noticeable change in the amount of sunlight at different times of year. So November to April is the rainy season, May to October is the summer season. Thus, the tropics and subtropics are characterized by numerous mini-seasons of the native agriculture within the larger 6-month dry seasons and 6-month rainy seasonal blocks of time. In other words, you got these 2 blocks of 6 months, and in them, there's various smaller seasons, in particular, the rainy seasons and the summer and autumn seasons, and then, of course, agricultural growth seasons of barley, wheat, the summer fruits. What's this here? Let me just put this on mute. Here's another website to check out for yourself. The weather in Jerusalem, season by season. The weather in Jerusalem is usually very predictable. There are 2 distinct seasons in the center of Israel, winter and summer. Rain is associated with the winter season from the scripture. Song of Solomon, chapter 2, verse 11. For lo, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone. You see that? The rain is associated with winter. And I'm going to define this word winter from the Strong's Concordance in a brief second. But again, notice the connection, right? Don't just think winter and only you just think of snow. That's just keeping your narrow-minded North America is just trying to shut you down. Verse 12, the flowers appear on the earth after the rain is gone. April showers. This is the scriptural April showers bring May flowers talk. The flowers appear on the earth. The time of the singing of the birds is come, and the voice of the turtle dove is heard in our land, in Israel. That word winter that you saw is defined as sethav up top, and it means winter or rainy season from your Strong's Concordance. Even below it says, from an unused root meaning to hide, winter, as the dark season. Winter. Wow. That same website says this about winter. It says, weather in Jerusalem in the winter is a bit less predictable than in the summer. The wet season starts in November and goes through April. Every few years, we're lucky to get enough of a light snowfall and the whole city grinds to a halt so everyone can get out and enjoy the wonder. But most of the time, it just doesn't get cold enough for snow. That's right. So again, this is from that same website. Notice at the bottom it says, because Israel's water supply is so dependent on rainfall, Israelis hope, pray, and beg the heavens for winter rains. Praise Jah. Climate to travel, climate/Israel official documents. It says here, annual precipitation is around 550, concentrated in the winter months, while from May to mid-October, remember I told you about that latter October rains, it almost never rains. Here is the average precipitation. So when we look at February, we got rain, even 4.7 inches. In March, 3.7 inches. Then April, 1 inch. Then we have 0.1 inch. 0.1 is like 3 millimeters, which is that small. You understand? So taking a look at this chart too, you see from May through to the end of October, you basically have no rain, right? And then at the end of October, you're going to get your little bit of rain as the early rains start to pick up before it officially gets going, as you can see in November. Beautiful. No problem. Summer is a dry season according to the scripture. Psalms 32, and I'm talking no problem to admit one. 32 verse 4. For day and night thy hand was heavy upon me. My moisture is turned into the drought of summer. So, summer is a dry season, right? Let's look at that same website, Jerusalem/insider/guide.com, weather in Jerusalem. Summer here runs from May to September. The one thing sure about this time of year, it will not rain. This is that great when you're on tour, blah, blah, blah. So even though they say September, right? It's October. They're just kind of cutting it short in this area because October, they see a little bit of rain. So they're probably just including October, but it's the last week or two of October where it begins to rain. But still, you can see again from May, and that's the point. Summer begins from May. When April showers end at the end of April, it's done. The latter rains is done. And you can't begin April as the beginning of the year and have 3-month rainy season going into May and June. It says it doesn't rain during those times. You see what I'm saying? I'm going to love next week still because this whole equinox March thing and, people not understanding February begins in a bib, it's going to, be clearly put to rest. And if people don't want to agree, that's fine. But in their disagreement, I'm going to be challenging them. Bring forth your information, not no little one verse here and there. Bring it on, right? It has to be challenged because otherwise, if I don't talk like this is just going to get hit in the corner. I'm like, oh, yeah, there's Jaws Almanac. It's over there. Yeah, they're just weird. They go in February. We're doing the right thing, letting the light shine. And that's what we got to do because there's too much falsehoods. The Compact Bible Dictionary says on page 48 under the heading of rain, in Palestine, the rainy season extends from October to April, the dry season from May to October. Look at that, man. The early rain occurs in October and November, the latter rain in March, they say, and April. but we know it's for 3 months, so it has to be February. Crops are therefore planted so that they will grow during the rainy season. That's exactly right. Here's the average monthly rainfall for Jerusalem again. Look how you see everything from February to March, from February through the end of April, rain. From October beginning, but officially November, you see how high things go. It's the summer from May to October, or the end of October, basically. Hours of daylight, same thing from February increasing to April. Summer begins from May, has its peak point at the summer solstice right here, then starts to decrease as we go throughout the year, perfectly operating within Jah's almanac and the climate and the sun times of Israel, without a doubt. Another chart of the average, again, rainfall in Jerusalem. You can see from end of April to October. Again, it lets you know when the rainy seasons really are. You want to look down low, look at it. You have in May, maybe you might have 2 days where it rained, but if it rained 2 days, that means it rained for like a minute, all the way through to the end of October. So spring begins in February in the land of Israel. And so 3 month latter rain season begins in February, and a bib is equal to February. First Chronicles 12. These are they which went over Jordan in the first month, when it had overflown all its banks. Family, why would Jordan overflow all its banks? Is it because it's the latter rain season, right? Yes, it is. Joshua 3:15, focusing on the red. For Jordan overfloweth all his banks all the time of harvest. Do you know that all the time of harvest is Abib, Ziph, and Sivan, months 1, 2, and 3, right? The latter rains, it's also called the harvest season, when you start the barley harvest and you start the wheat harvest. So it overflows all that time. Why? Because of the rain, everyone. And look at it, notices, you see the scripture, First Chronicles, it talks about the first month, and then Joshua talks about all the time of harvest, the whole 3 months. Joshua 4 at the bottom, and it says, and flowed over all his banks as they did before. And this again is talking about Joshua up there in chapter 3. It's almost dealing with the same time period. Again, as we start to shut this down, average rainfall in Jerusalem, looking at it again. So now here's the official monthly climate averages. We have our season, we have the latter rains, the grain harvest, we have our summer fruits, and we have our early rains. So we have our Abib, February, Ziph, Sivan, and don't worry, these names aren't spelled wrong. It's just there wasn't enough space to put them all in there. I had to choose the best letters and numbers. Yeah, you have the months, the days, you have your temperatures in degrees Celsius and degrees Fahrenheit. You have your hours of daylight, so nobody can't chat. You have your rain in millimeters and in inches. You have your days of rain as well, and you can start to see everything with the color code. It's perfectly in harmony. Understand? Praise Jah. These things cannot be gainsaid at all. I'm going to keep saying that. And it's not me boasting. It's like I'm really confidently challenging. I want to have people talk against it so that we can deal with this case. But otherwise, I know people more or less just try to shove it under the rug, so to speak. But I'm not going away. I mean, unless Jah take me away, but it's going to be brought out more and more, and I'm not going to stop. We cannot stop, right? The truth has to be put out there. Let me see what else we got here. Oh, yeah. It doesn't matter where you want to go in Israel. You're going to still have, you can go to Tel Aviv. You can go to Beit Dagan. You can go to Jerusalem. You can go to Haifa, Safed, Beersheba, all in the land of Israel, different parts, north, south, west, east of Israel, showing you again how the summer season and rainy seasons work perfectly. Take a screenshot, do whatever you have to do, study it, go to the website, type in climates of Israel or whatever, and then come back and read the scriptures and look at these videos. All right.